Okay, so I don't want to start till we record it.
We're good, Robin, go.
Okay, are you recording, Jonathan?
I am.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to welcome you all and give you a little background on about what we're going to talk about today, and then we'll take turns kind of monitoring the chat box for questions. And then please feel free to chime in if you have questions. Give us a thumbs up or some sort of signal so we know to quit talking and listen to what you have to say. So just a little background. Jonathan, you can put up the brochure if you want. We finally have gotten together our brochure to advertise our program, and you'll be getting some nice print copies in each of your offices very soon that we want you to share with kids and parents. So just a little background on our project. We wrote this grant last year for the Elbogen monies for something we've been talking about in 4-H, a group of us, for quite a few years. In fact, I looked back and I have some notes from a conversation between, I think, Dawn and Warren and I, and probably Jonathan, in 2008. So we've talked a long time about how much work a lot of our livestock members put into their projects, and really how knowledgeable they get by the time they're a senior in high school on their knowledge on their projects. And had the thought process of, wouldn't it be great if someday they could get some college credit for what they're doing? And so we wrote this grant, and we've been working with Worry Means and Animal Science to create a way where our 4-H kids will be able to get college credit at the University of Wyoming for their participation in 4-H livestock projects and associated learning through this program along the way. So we really did need kind of some grant money to get it kickstarted. We're very thankful for the Elbogen money that's allowed us to have some money to travel and meet as a group, to produce some things that we're going to need to circulate, and then to provide some resources and materials to get the program up and running. Oops, sorry, I'm losing my spot. So I guess just real quickly, just look for the brochures in your office that kind of explains the program. But what we would like to do is kind of give you a more detailed breakdown of how this would work, and then give you some ideas of ways that you guys could be involved. We're always looking for collaborators and participants to help us. You'll notice on the back of the brochure that Jonathan has up, there's a list of names of folks that we coerced into working on this project with us, because we felt really confident that they would help us recruit kids into the program and that they had an interest in helping. But there's really a lot of work we have to do as far as developing some activities for the program and learning lessons. So we look forward to having some participation from many of you on the call. So Dawn, go ahead.
All right, Jonathan, if you'll bring up our breakdown. So the idea is that the kids that are engaged in this program would have the opportunity to log through YO courses to meet some requirements in order to gain credit from the university for a new class called ANSC 1009. The idea is if a kid completes this program and earns 4 credits, that it would be able to substitute in for the actual animal science class, which is 1010 at the University of Wyoming, or if they're at a junior college or another college, it could be used as an elective class. The regular current 1010 class is for every credit hour, which the kids earn 4, is it requires about 15 hours of instructions and a lab. So what we've done is that we've worked with Worry Means as far as to structure the new 1009 class to mirror that 1010 class, so our kids are meeting similar requirements and doing similar type work as what they would if they were enrolled in that class. So what we have here is kind of a breakdown of what it would look like in relationship to what would be required of the kids each year. So, for example, in year 1, if you look there, is that Jonathan's going to go over a more graphic outline of the areas of study in just a moment, but the kids would complete in year 1 6 hours of lecture, and each one of those would be 1 to 2 hours based on those 6 topics area there. So breeds is 1, nutrition's 1, selection evaluation is 2, 3, meat science, care and prevention, and reproduction. So those are the focal areas for their study. These lectures would be delivered via Zoom where kids will do a live version where the kids could log on and see a live version, have interaction with the instructor, ask questions, etc. However, if they were unable to view the lecture on the day that it's given, it would be recorded and they could connect to it through the WIO course class and still go back and be able to complete that lecture component on their own timeline. So it would include, I mean, and typically if each of these lectures are longer, then obviously this would be more than 6 hours, but it would be a minimum of 6 hours each in those areas. We are working as far as through the Animal Science Department to engage some of our specialists to teach these lecture components part of it, or if there's areas that maybe there isn't a professor that has that expertise, then at that point we are engaging some of our extension personnel to teach those topics, and that really just falls into that breed category is really one that will be taught by extension. Other than that, those other areas will be taught by individuals on campus. And the reason why we've selected to do that is that we have to have somewhat rigor to this program and be able to show that these kids are being required in completing this similar to what they would on campus. So also in year 2 is they would complete those lectures, but then additionally, they will be required to do 12 hours of hands-on lab. And what that would encompass or look like is that they would have a minimum of 2 labs in each of those areas. So they would do 2 labs in the breeds, 2 labs in nutrition, 2 labs in selection and evaluation, etc. The idea behind this is that hopefully that this is where it comes into what our kids are already doing that can count towards a lab. So a lab would be instructional components that are actually taught by extension people across the state or other specialists or maybe organized or hosted by our extension people. So an example of that would be the artificial insemination workshops, or it could be Cowboy Youth Classic, or it could be that they attend and participate in the state meat judging contest. So those are things that maybe kids are already doing and that they would engage to it. Also, we will have some components in there that the kids could complete on their own. For say, if they needed to learn how to draw blood, if that's one of the lab activities, then that's something that they could organize with their local vet, and then their vet would sign off after they've had that instruction from their local vet. So what this does do is it gives the kids opportunity to complete these labs in an environment within their own counties, as well as highlighting opportunities across the state. And so we will keep an ongoing list that obviously will be fluent as we add and additional learning opportunities to them that the kids can utilize as one of their labs for the year. And so with that, with the 6 hours of lecture and then the 12 hours minimum of lab is where we get the 18 hours of instructions for year 1. As I said, as in the current 10-10 classes, they have to have 15 hours to get 1 credit. And so this is a proposed 3-year program, so that's why they get 18 in that first year. Year 2 mirrors the same exact concept. The difference is that 6 hours of instructions will be within each of those 6 focal areas. However, it will be a different defined area. So, for example, reproduction might move into, that was a hard one to pick. I don't have that in front of me. I can look. Hold on, let me give you. So like year 2, the focal point for reproduction is the Punnett square, whereas the first year it was artificial insemination. So each year that will change as far as what the focal point of those lecture components will be. And then if you go down, year 3 is going to be similar. They'll get 18 hours of the same exact thing with just different focal points in each of those areas. And then additionally, each youth will be required to complete 1 capstone experience that will be held at the University of Wyoming. With that being said, is that we hope to encourage kids and that they would participate in the capstone each year. You know, so a kid that starts this program as a freshman could potentially attend a capstone every year and have 3 of those, which we're hoping for. However, in order to get their credit, they'll be required to attend 1, which then we're estimating with a day and a half that they would get about 9 hours of instruction at that capstone experience. Capstone experience, I mean, the exciting part is that we're bringing youth to campus and that they're engaging in learning opportunities with our departments there. And so it would be like a rotational type situation where youth would do an activity within the meat science lab, and then they might do something at the state vet lab, etc. So, and then on top of that is where there'll be some practical application time. And this is where the kids are hopefully going to take what they learn about nutrition and then they'll apply it to their own animal projects in their area. And so we're estimating that, throughout the course of their time completing this, that they'll have 30 additional hours. We're estimating 10 per year, where they're going to take whatever they're learning and apply it to their individual project areas. So a couple of things just to highlight on this is that the kids would have to have some connection or opportunity to be related to an animal project because of that link where they have to apply it to their animal project. So with that being said, once a kid completes all of that, we're estimating they get about 93 hours of instruction, and then that would equal 4 credit hours. As we said, that kind of mirrors the Animal Science 1010 class. They require 16. We actually think our kids will end up with more than what their minimum is right now. The class is considered a variable credit hour class, so kids can enroll or start the program as a freshman all the way through, their first year in college if they have 1 year of age eligibility left in 4-H. So for example, if they're a senior in high school this year, they can still participate in the program as long as they can be in 4-H this year. With that being said, that they would only get 1 credit hour, obviously, because they would only be able to complete 1 year of the work. And so that will be based upon the kids and what they would like to do and how many credit hours that they would like to get. In order for it to sub in as the ANSI 1010 class, obviously, they would have to have received the 4 credits. With that being said, and Warren's going to talk more about the credit aspect of it, but the kids really, how the program works is that they will do the work in advance, and then after they've completed the work is when they actually enroll in the class. So they would not enroll in the ANSI 1009 class until they've completed all their work. And Warren's going to cover that, I believe, in his section a little bit more. Is there questions around this aspect of it? All right, Jonathan, I think you're up next with that chart, with the 3-year chart.
Okay, there's none in the chat box, everybody, as far as that goes. Is it either raise your hand or unmute yourself real quick if you're not able to see what's on the screen effectively? Do I need to make it bigger or shorter? Just quickly let us know if you have issues. I'm monitoring the participants, looking for any hands up, and there are none. And nobody's unmuted that I can tell, so I'll move forward. Okay, so that you heard from where we organized this started this through the Elbogen grant, and Dawn gave an overview of the breakdown of the 3 years related to the hours. What I want to do is talk a little bit more about how we tried to organize it over the 3 years in order to break this down to make animal science mirror as much as possible, and quite honestly to get their buy-in in terms of the rigor involved in this. We took their syllabus for Animal Science 1010 and looked at the topics and the professors to make sure that the topics that they were covering in the areas matched up. And out of that, what we realized was they basically covered these topics. They covered breeds, nutrition, selection evaluation, some degree of meat science related to it, care and prevention, and genetics. And then they tried to, in that one course, they covered all sorts of different species, beef, sheep, horses. So what we did was try to divide that up over 3 years, taking the same content area and then picking topics within it that seemed to be taught within that 1010 course, but also were things that we thought were evident for us that we either have connections to, maybe some of the things that we are already doing in our program through our youth quality assurance or meat quality assurance program, or other livestock training curriculum already covers. And out of that came these different topics. So in essence, what we did is within these 6 topics, we were able to identify that in the 1010 class within the breeds, they identified different breeds based on the animals, the different kinds of animals. So they had to get a generic overview of all these different kinds of breeds and their purposes for their development. In addition to that, we came up with these topics that matched similar to those that would work with our program within them. So for nutrition, the topic of nutrition, Animal Science 1010, and then also because of that, how we've organized this ANSC 1009 class, is that they talk about rations and balancing of rations, they talk about digestive systems, and they talk about feeds and feeding as topics within the nutrition category. That's where these topics came from. Same thing then applied with our evaluation selection. They talk about anatomy of animals related to the composition of animals within selecting animals for participation in our youth livestock projects. Our kids go pick out animals, so it made sense that some of those things carried over. One around industry relation. Oh, excuse me. Let me undo that. I didn't mean for that to happen. Related to the relationships that they have within the industry. So there wasn't just this moment related to, again, selection evaluation that tied back to industry in general. And then the last one was actual live animal evaluation. Can they evaluate animals as they're live? From the meat science perspective, those three topics we came up with were understanding the cuts, the wholesale, the retail, the aspect of meat science as a meat project animal for those that have an end product of a meat project. Understanding that in some form there is a tie to the meat industry with a lot of our animal science projects. And regardless, if you take the Animal Science 1010 and you have no interest in those areas, as a 4-H project, for example, with horses, you need to understand that in other parts of the world there are those components, for one, and number two, there still is this component that they cover in Animal Science 1010 related to the other aspects of the other species. So again, for the meat science, there's understanding those parts, harvesting, the actual harvesting of them, fabrication, the actual cutting, testing, how they make different types of products that are then open to the public. So meat science, those were the three. Under care and prevention, the topics that were created were diseases, vaccinations, and monitoring and husbandry. Okay. And then for genetics, it was artificial insemination, understanding genetics we put Punnett and Square from that perspective. Again, this is in year 2. Those could probably be changed in terms of understanding what the topics, but understanding genetics in general and inheritability. As you can tell off of this chart, this was a draft component for us to start getting these ideas on one sheet related to what it would look like. So we had, as Robin mentioned, a visual to help us frame the conversation. And in a minute, Warren's going to cover more of where we're at right now related to this first year and how we're getting that started. But within this, you can see these are the topics that were developed within each of those 6 categories. So in year 1, year 2, and year 3, all of these 6 topics that Dawn mentioned, that's why they do the lab components to these areas, are associated with them. And also the lecture. So in each year, they're going to get 6 hours of lecture around these topics with activities around these topics to be able to choose and participate in.
Jonathan, it's Robin. I need to interrupt you for just 1 minute, though. I just want to stress real quickly that this is a draft, and this one doesn't say draft across it. It should, I'm sorry. But as we're working through this, we're making small, minor changes. And so for those of you that are interested in helping us in any way as we kind of shape this thing and get it off the ground, you have the opportunity to make a few changes. One of the things that just caught my eye is on year 1, genetics and reproduction. I think the topic changed from AI to something that includes AI, but the topic as we zeroed in on year 1 and really got our activities list and our lecture list ready, I think that topic changed. So
I think it was on reproduction.
It's reproduction specific.
Yeah, instead of specifically AI. Just so you guys know, I mean, it's draft, and as you see, if you want to be a part, and as you see things that we could change or do a little bit better, you know, we encourage you to help us make those changes.
There, I've typed that in on this one for now.
Perfect. Sorry, I should have done that.
There you go.
Okay.
So besides that, I guess part of the opportunities for growth down the road, and at the same time where we need some help along this process, is to continue to identify the types of activities and labs that will be successful in being able to meet those hours that are required for the lab-on experiences. There'll be a template that will be shared on how we're trying to look through some of the reporting process related to that and what that's going to look like down the road, so that there could be an opportunity for you with an interest in maybe any one of these areas, or people you know that have really cool activities that you think could connect with these things, that could help us develop and make this list of activities and labs and things that could be added to these grow. The goal out of this was to create opportunities for young people to think through learning experiences that were hands-on, that they could do collectively, easily, by professionals locally or close by, and identify some of those volunteers. Or they could be a volunteer, it could be other people. But at the same time, from our perspective as educators, it's to have that rigor. We are not wanting just a volunteer to sign stuff off and check boxes. This is about those learning experiences, and we're trying to frame what that's going to look like, with the idea that these young people can have a lot of learning experiences, and by doing and connecting in their community with a variety of professionals in these different areas, they can be learning and they can be developing, and some of them are already doing that. So tie those pieces together.
Jonathan, we had a question in the chat box, and I think I'm going to, if you don't mind, I might just go ahead and answer it now, just so that everyone understands. So Steve asked if there are assessments and tests, and it's something we really didn't put in our outline to talk about, so I'm just going to put it in real quick. So the way this is going to work is the lecture portions, like Don said, would be on Zoom. We're going to encourage the kids to take them live on Zoom so they have an opportunity to interact and ask questions. If not, they'll be able to watch them on the video later. Those videos and all of their assignments for this course will be posted on YO courses. And so after the kids watch their instructional video from whoever the lecture person is, we're going to have those people develop a quiz that they'll actually take online through YO courses. So the lecture part of the class for them, they will have some quizzes, which will be their grade. The rest of their grade is going to be based on their participation in these other activities and labs and the intensive weekend experience. So those are things like they'll have to create a portfolio of documentation of learning. So for example, we have an AI school, which is one of their choices maybe for the genetics reproduction year 1. So if a kid goes to the AI school, they're going to have a worksheet that they're going to have to fill out that they have to reflect on what that they've learned on that. That's going to go into their file or their portfolio on YO courses, and we'll save it until they enroll in the course and they get their final grade based off that and the quizzes. So I hope that clarifies. If not, please ask further questions.
There's another great question from Wind River that, Dawn, I'll refer to you to respond to if you would. It says, so there's a strict schedule rather than a checklist. Is there any room for meeting requirements out of order? And he suggests from year 1 to year 2 topics and activities. If a youth has an opportunity to see a cannulated cow in year 1, can they do the digestion year 1 and rations year 2? Make sure you unmute yourself, Dawn.
All right. So the answer is that it is going to be based on a year 1. So there is flexibility in the schedule in concepts that once we get like the lectures done for each of those areas, that a kid could enroll in the program in March for say and go back and do the Zooms Breeds lecture that was done in January. So there is some flexibility in terms of them completing that. But we hashed this out. We talked a lot about this, and we came up with the final answer is that it's whatever is the focal for year 1 is what the kids will be learning for that year, and then year 2 and year 3, which means as a kid comes into the program, they could come into the program at year 2, but that's going to be their year 1 basically. They're going to start doing all that information and learn what's in year 2, and then they'll catch up and do year 1 when it's taught again in the 3rd rotation. Did I say that correctly?
I understood it, but I've also been engaged in the conversation. So ultimately, the answer to your question is correct. They are not going to be able to multiply. That's kind of where the line had to draw between the content of the Animal Science 1010 aspect of it, from my perspective, and being able to manage this from year to year to year. It's easy when you're in one semester to move stuff around and cram it. When you go to year and want you to check it off, they had to have a line drawn, and that's where we drew one of the lines with them and being able to make this happen. Down the road, honestly, Coleman, I think there could be some potential with that, but until we get through this first cycle of the next 3 years and show how this is playing out and being effective with it, not only will it morph a little bit, I think, but it is going to have some degree of rigidity, and that's where we had to draw the line with Animal Science Department. Another topic in the chat box says, I like the topics, but it does seem from my thinking that year 2 seems more of year 1 topics. I think it all gets back to how you approach the educational system, Kelly. I understand what you're saying. I think you're saying that sometimes you harvest the animal before you worry about cutting them up. Maybe, am I understanding your question? Or that you vaccinate against diseases, or you understand genetics before reproduction?
Yeah, I was looking at nutrition. That from my thinking, it'd be better to understand the cannulated cow and maybe the parts of the rumen, the whole digestive system, and then talk about feed conversion and balancing rations. So I didn't know if like year 1 and year 2 are already locked in, or I'm just thinking, and that's the way I think, and that's probably not the scientific Mike Day thinking on it either. Just a question.
No, great question. And we had these conversations too. And I guess I wouldn't disagree that they could be in some different order. Part of the transition of this was us trying to figure out some of what was like what Dawn said, that if a child starts in 2 years and they're doing year 3 first, they're still going to get back to this stuff. So it's not able to be progressive. Meaning you can't start with these topics the first year, because then we're teaching all of these topics every year for every child to be able to progress through. And so the only way we could make it work with animal science was to be able to limit this first time around, and being to say, these are what we can topic. This is how we can work with professors and everybody else to get these pieces done and get it off the ground. So that is the trade-off. You're right. Because it's supposed to be progressive in theory, but it's not going to be in applicability, simply because 2 years from now, there will be a whole cohort of kids that will be signing up here. And if you're trying to manage 3 different cohorts of groups of kids with all these professors, then literally we would have all of these running all of the time. And that was too much right now for the Animal Science Department to comprehend from their perspective, as well as our comfort level. And I may be speaking out of turn from the other members, but my comfort level, at least, on what we thought us and all of our colleagues could manage in trying to describe the process. We narrowed it down. It started that way. So there's another question. Did I answer your question, Kelly? Give me a nod or a yes or something. Yeah, I got you. It wasn't a question we agree with you. That was kind of one of the compromises is the answer. Other than the chat boxes, so there's a 3-year rotation and all youth are doing the same year's worth of topics concurrently. Yes. And Warren's going to cover that next. That's a great segue into year 1. And like I said, now that you've seen kind of this topic areas, as Warren goes into this first year, it'll get a little more specific on what we're looking like, and then we'll back out related to the course itself as we finish up with Robin and Dawn and our next steps out of this. So Warren, I'll turn it over to you, and I'll mute myself, and then I will pull up your year 1. Is that
Jonathan, I just want to interject one thing I just thought of, just Kelly, just in relation to your comment. And we did talk about, it does make sense to know something about the digestive system before we start in nutrition. But our issue is that sometimes, particularly, what if this kid is coming in as a first-year 4-H member with a livestock project as well? They really, from the get-go, need to understand how to feed their animal more than they need to understand digestion. So it was kind of a catch, I mean, really. They're going to get their animal and they got to know how to feed it. And so those are kind of some of the conversations we had. And as you looked at the Animal Science 1010 syllabus, we kind of noticed that those topics are kind of thrown about in there too, where it fits when the professor that's teaching that section can fit it in. So it's not ideal, you're right, but it's kind of how it worked out.
So just kind of give you a quick recap of where we're heading next. So Jonathan talked about the 3-year progression of all of the topics. So we're going to look at just year 1 and look at some of these topics in a little bit more specific detail and kind of see how we're doing it. The one thing that I'm going to add right up front, so I hope everybody can hear me all right. I've got the university's grounds people right outside my window with blowing leaves around, so I hope it's not too loud. Is everybody okay? All right, good. So to kind of just give you some little more detail into the snapshot of year 1 and kind of show you how we try to organize it. So one thing that's a little bit different about the 1010 course is really what they had is 3 or 4 lectures and then a lab. Right? We've kind of tried to flip that. So what we have is we're going to have the lecture and then lab or field experiences that will be multiple lab or field experiences. So like for example, we want to do maybe one lecture in reproduction, and then we want them to pick from a checklist. And this is kind of where I was thinking about with Coleman's question, is a little bit of a checklist. We want to have as many opportunities as we can for these students to choose what area or what field experiences they want to take. So you can see in our lab activities, those are the ones that we're really looking at for basically us within Extension to kind of create these opportunities where these kids can do it. Some of them are already created that Don talked about, and then if there's some that we can pick up and build for them, that's more the better. If I remember correctly, we decided on that they needed to do 2 lab or field experiences for each of these topics. Am I right on that statement? I don't want to. So basically, like for example, in the reproduction, they'll do 1 lecture, and then we want them to pick at least 2 of 5 or 6, 10, however many come up with field experiences. Our thinking behind this was really not everybody from each part of the state is going to be able to get to all of them. You know, some of them in certain areas there might be more opportunities than others, and so we want to make sure that there's a variety of things. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Everybody's flashing around on my screen here. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go through these one by one, but I wouldn't mind. So I'll tell you kind of what we did with these activities and lab experiences. We kind of just got together and just kind of brainstormed some ideas. So what I would like from our group here, to just kind of give you a heads up, if there are other activities or ideas for field experiences or for labs that you identified that kids could take on and do, we would love to hear those. So as what I would do is we're kind of going through these. If you can just unmute, pipe in and say, I think this would be a cool idea, we'll make sure and get that written down and get those added to the list so that we can kind of expand and grow on these ideas. And then, as Don said, I'll also kind of explain the credits when I'm done with this, just kind of how it will work within the university system. I want to go through these basically a little bit backwards, right to left, and I'll explain that why in a second. So I want to start with the reproduction. So you can see our learning objective that's here. Students will learn really the reproduction process. So when we kind of brainstorm some ideas of how they would be able to garner that experience, we kind of come up with some of these. We know that there's quite a few AI schools that are put on by many of our ag and hort educators. Sometimes we think there's maybe some of them without, external to extension that they could get to. Those are one of the a clear thing. If there's an opportunity for them to work with a local vet, if an opportunity to work with maybe even a company that does artificial insemination, maybe even some harvesting or gathering of eggs or semen or anything like that, would kind of get them to kind of see this reproduction cycle and process. That would be great. We're looking for those. Ultrasounding for preg checking, any of those type of things that they would be able to learn about the reproduction cycle. So if there's any other topics or ideas that people come up with, I'd, like say, just unmute, jump in. We'd love to hear them and love to kind of see what other ideas are out there. I'm just checking on the chat box. One of them said, I'm sorry, I remember I get up to the top. And so that's one thing. So one of them says, is there an opportunity to incorporate some of these labs into our annual livestock camp? Some of you have some maybe more fitting and showing type things. If there's something that you can add into theirs, those are absolutely what. I mean, anytime we can reinforce what they're learning through these each of these topics, that's exactly what we're looking for. One of the things that we always know that we're hands-on learning, we're experiential learning. So that's why the idea of kind of flipped. We want more hands-on lab experiences than classroom lecture type experiences. That's kind of what we're looking for in those. So the other thing that we've kind of talked about that would kind of fit with each of those, that if students wanted to do some sort of presentations, either through the presentation state, even with their club meeting, if they were able to, like for example, reproduction, if they were going to do a demonstration to share the reproduction cycle with the other members of their club, that things like that would be able to count for their field experience. Because we all know once they have to teach it, you'd probably learn more than you would anyway by standing and listening. So those are some of the things there. So the next one I'm going to go on to is care and prevention. This one was specifically with diseases. You can see the learning objective there. There's a lot of different things that we can do with diseases, and that's what we kind of talked about. If there's a way that they can learn about IDing the different diseases, drawing blood, testing, any type of visit to a lab, maybe their local vet is doing some things. Those type of things is what we're looking for. The one thing that's key to all of this is for each of these activities or field experiences, there's a worksheet that the students will fill out that will require them to answer some questions. Excuse me, I probably apologize for that. This will kind of help guide the things that they'll learn there. So what we don't want is they're just there with a vet and they're just following around, and then at the end they're like, well, thanks, here, can you sign my paper? I mean, that doesn't mean they're not going to learn anything, but there's some guiding questions that we want them to pick up and learn, and maybe even to ask their vets things that they want to be able to see, want them to be able to do, so that they can apply these learning principles. Of course, in the next one, we'll go on to the meat science part. Obviously, if they visited any site, any site with a processing facility, if they see that processing happen, if they meat judge with their 4-H program, where hopefully they're going to learn their wholesale and resale cuts of meat. So that's something that they can do there. Some of these ultrasounding demonstrations, workshops are fantastic for kids to kind of get the idea what they're looking for with marbling, back fat, to make sure that there's a quality cut of meat associated with their animal project themselves. Moving on, next one, selection evaluation. We have anatomy. So you can see that the different brainstormed lists that we could do there of things that kids learns about. If there's some sort of judging camp, anything that they're able to learn about that. So as you can kind of see, the reason I kind of wanted to work left to right is once we kind of get to the nutrition and the breeds section of it, the actual field experiences maybe are less prevalent, maybe less available. So you can kind of see our topic with balancing rations. So we maybe struggled a little bit coming up with, well, what are some of the things that students could do that would help them learn about balancing rations type of thing. So you can kind of see that there's obviously feed dealers that are pretty knowledgeable in those type of things. But as we can kind of get through there, you can kind of see there's certain things that they can learn, but our intent is we really want them to do it. That's something, if they learn how to do it, they can actually do it with themselves. The one thing I'll kind of add is, in all of these, we really wanted there to be an opportunity for the students to apply what they've learned on their market animals, if they have them. So this is one of those things that we would absolutely love to do. That once they're comfortable doing it, they have that knowledge, that they are able to come home and do it with their swine, their beef project, their goat project, whatever they have, that they can actually apply it to what they're raising in their own barn or their own pen. So that's kind of what we're looking at for there, is the balanced rations. This year, this first year in the breeds, we specifically picked beef cattle and then 2 of the small animals. I will mention that the small animals were not part of the Animal Science program, the Animal Science 1010, but we felt it's important enough within our program, and we have that many kids are involved in a lot of these projects as well, that we figure it was important that we also offer those. They are market animals for the most part, so that we felt like it would fit perfect. So this year we specifically picked those 2, or those small animals, poultry and rabbits, and then the beef cattle. As you can see those, we want them to just learn about the bit different characteristics of the different breeds, what they're kind of used for, what strengths of the characteristics of each breed would have. So you can kind of see there, identification purposes, differences of those different breeds. And then this is what we think a lot of. Maybe they could even do some sort of poster paper comparisons to help demonstrate what they've learned through that section as well. So what I'd like to do is just stop for a second. If anybody has any kind of ideas that they thought, well, that would be perfect to fit in any of these topics, I would love to hear those. And then just any general questions that you have as before we move on.
So Warren, this is Robin. I've been kind of looking through the chat thing, and there's a lot of really good suggestions in that. So at the end of this, I'd like us to save that chat and maybe go back and have some conversations with, I see some things from Kelly that I think would be really good. Anyway, I just want to make sure that we capture those and save that chat.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you have to do that, Jonathan, or if we can.
I'll try, but I've been writing them down too.
So other ideas or questions before we...
So Warren, there's a good question in there from Kelly.
Which one are you looking at?
And I don't really know how to answer that, and other than that it's so it's the last question from Kelly Crane. So the only thing I would say, Kelly, is I kind of just assumed that we would take that role, and maybe not, I don't know, maybe we would have to be designated as such, but
as far as the advisor.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't really specifically talked about advisor. There for every class there has to be designated instructors, either one or multiple instructors. So we did talk about that specifically. The advisor, that's something that we didn't. I don't know of any reason why we couldn't, but that's maybe something that we need to follow up with and talk with Animal Science specifically to see if they have any preference or role that they would play in that as well. I would just guess that they probably wouldn't care much because they probably got enough advisees with the on-campus students. So I think that might be something that we could probably easily do.
I'll just jump into response to that too. I think that's part of the conversation that our current university president is revamping or looking at on campus. So the outcomes of that could play out over the next couple of years, which could create that opportunity for us. What a great role for us to play down the road. I know that in at least my perception of our initial conversations with the department, though, Kelly, was that that's one of the things they view as their job is to advise students and give them grades. And so I'm not sure how that would play out, at least with the current department, but I do know that the university's plan has been moving towards more of a centralized, or part of the plan of a centralized initial, like for freshman and sophomore advising. And if they do that, there could be opportunities for us to be connected that way. So could be chances. I'll shut up.
Yeah, that's really why I asked it. And so once a student declares a major, I think that's when departments get kind of protective of that designated advisor. But the reality is on campus, advising students is a metric of productivity, right? And so on campus, that's true, and it's off campus true also. So if 4-H could represent that at an annual basis of how many non-declared, non-enrolled UW students or not formally enrolled full-time students that we advise, I think that's meaningful. And like Robin says, we're going to do it informally anyway. And so if we could get the formal designation, and I think we'd all have, our 4-H educators would have to have some training because you'd have to know about broader curriculum requirements and broader degree requirements and other colleges. But we can easily do that and provide that training, and then we would be trained, formally assigned as the advisor of these students should they go on to the university or whatever. I think it would be a good thing for us to do if we can.
Great point.
So Warren, can I just jump in real quick before you kind of talk about the credit plan and stuff?
Sure.
So I guess I just want to reiterate that this again is just a draft on year one. although we really do have to get started right away. So just some information for you guys. We kind of have identified who will teach the lecture portions. Some of those are our specialists on campus. Worry actually wanted to be the one to visit with those folks. Many of those folks also have extension appointments, so he wanted to be the one to visit with them and twist their arm. We have already asked on the breeds. That's the one where we really didn't feel like we had specialists on campus. So just this morning, Hudson, who's on our Zoom meeting right now, agreed that he would do the poultry for us. Don will be doing the rabbits, and then Chance Marshall will be doing our beef breeds. So the question about from Cinnamon, I think we need to address that says, are we as educators going to have to complete any teaching training requirements? So the reason that though we're having specialists on campus or educators that are at least a master's level teaching those courses, teaching the online like lecture portion of the courses, is because Worry was pretty, I mean, he didn't absolutely demand, but he was pretty strict about it's just that the academic way, and he was, you know, in no way trying to be offensive to any of our educators that don't have a master's. We're all just as good as everyone else, but it's just the academic system. They tend to have a little bit of snobbery when it comes to the number of letters that you have behind your name. So that's kind of how we're protecting what they define as the rigor. And then the other thing, I just wanted to jump in and say, we are happy to host another conference call or Zoom meeting down the road for people like Kelly Chichester, and I see some comments from Mary Louise, people that have ideas that they want to be a part of this. This is what we're asking for right now, is for people to get involved and help us develop some of the activities and things that can work as labs for this class. So I guess just send us a chat that you're interested in that so that we know and we can capture that and schedule a time.
Robin,
go ahead.
popped up there too real quick that in the chat box that you're going to be sharing pretty soon that other document as an example that applies to what Cinnamon's talking about, of ways that roles that our educators can be thinking about playing. Yeah, there could be some great people helping us think about who could be doing those lectures in your local communities, but I think our bigger role right now is going to be tied to coming up with those awesome activities and ideas that we can add to those lists, and then what those learning objectives look like and what the portfolio questions might be like. So as you share that in a while, Cinnamon, I think that might get covered.
Jonathan, I was just going to maybe build on Cinnamon's question there too, is that the other component as far as within these activities and labs that still has to be there is the concept of rigor in relationship to them too. So the labs here will be, I mean, flexible, but with some concreteness as well as far as what can be an acceptable lab and who is going to be giving the instruction of it. So I think that's important discussion to have, is that, you know, things that are delivered through our extension program, obviously within the lab and activities are beautiful and would automatically fit. So there's no additional training. I mean, if Stacy was sharing and that they were doing stuff in their camps and that they could add another component within those. And obviously that could automatically just be accepted as one of those experiences as long as they're within the list here and that we have the documentation worksheet for the kid to fill out in that. However, just going out to the backyard and preg testing with your dad and having your dad sign off that he did a lab with him is not an acceptable format. So I think that we still have to be cautious and we still have to have some rigor even within those labs of what is an acceptable experience and not. And I will give my personal, this is my personal example maybe to help explain that is that I draw a lot of blood on sheep to have it tested. I can guarantee you 100% that I do not do it in the exact way that it should be done. So I probably am not the best person to be teaching kids how to draw blood until I go figure out how to do it the way that they should be doing it with vacutainers and etc. I mean, I know how it should be done, but I don't do that at home. So I wouldn't want to be the one teaching kids how to draw blood because I'm not teaching them maybe the proper technique to do that. Whereas they could go work with a local vet that does it for a living and maybe theirs isn't the exact proper thing, but at least an acceptable format under the auspice of a DMB. So I think those are things that we have to keep in mind. So within the extension program, I think we're fine. As far as when kids are looking out beyond the extension role to find opportunities to fill in these lab requirements, I think that we have to be able to have an approval process in advance so that they know that. Oh, Mary Louise, I just seen your comment. Scott, that's great. But Scott Lake is one of the extension people. So I think Mary Louise's question was, may need to have that conversation on the dad side also because Scott Lake, for example, is a dad. Well, I think Scott Lake is a great example of somebody that could be doing a lab because of the fact that he has that experience, but it's something that's offered to other people, somebody that has training in it. I just think we have to be cautious as we walk down those roads and make sure that our kids are receiving the proper instruction.
Great, thanks. So let me just kind of do a quick thing. One thing I just wanted to mention when we talk about rigor, I mean, there wasn't necessarily that they weren't approaching it, not talking about I'm talking about more in the animal science department. What they weren't really approaching it is there's this body of knowledge that these kids have to have. What they're thinking about it in the terms of is that this 1009 class is going to replace the 1010 class, the basic introductory, that if the student came in with this 1009 class, that they could go on to the next level animal science class and still progress and do well. They don't want them to come into that next level class and be lost. So that's what we're talking about is the rigor, is there's this still kind of general body of knowledge that kids come in with this level of knowledge that they're ready to move on to that next level animal science course. So it's not in the terms of, who can teach it right or wrong. It's more or less of, these are the things we cover in 1010. These are the professors that we have covering those. This is kind of the basic minimums that we want students to know about this class before they go on to that next level animal science class. So hopefully that clears up a little bit of what we're kind of talking about in the rigor and why they feel like it's important that we incorporate that rigor as they're defining it in our class as well. So the other thing that I was just going to talk quick about is the credit portion of it. So one thing that you can see that this is a 3-year class. So everything else on the University of Wyoming, every class is basically associated with a semester. So obviously we're not going to be able to have them sign up and take this class over 3 years when it's a 1-semester class. How it works, so basically there's 2 options, is that the students will either be accepted to the University of Wyoming as a high school guest, or register for the course and take it within that semester, or they will be able to do it as a freshman at the University of Wyoming and sign up for that course based on their past field work. That's why we have it as a variable course. So if they come in as a senior right now, they could mainly get into this year. If they're still age eligible, they could maybe do next year as a freshman and get 2 credits. If they start as a freshman or sophomore and able to work through all 3 of them, then they're able to get the full 4 credits. The thing that's important for people to understand, though, is if they don't get all 4 credits in Animal Science 1009 and they're an Animal Science major, they're still going to require them to take the Animal Science 1010 course. They didn't get all of the documentation. So that's one thing that as a high school guest, if they sign up for that designation, the University of Wyoming puts them on a contingency basis for 1 semester. They're automatically kicked out. So if they were going to continue it, they would have to apply to the university and be accepted every single year. So that's why us within Extension are going to basically officially accept them into the program, track their progress. They can still do it, sign in and do it through WIO courses. We can still do all of the tracking of their progress, the lectures, their tests, have them sign up as a high school guest, register for the course, and then their coursework for the prior 3 years will count for their grade within the end of their time. So that's how it'll work. Basically, 1 shot opportunity as a high school guest or as a freshman at the university. I think the tuition is basically going to be about the same. One thing is if they're a freshman, they'll be able to count scholarships, Hathaway, those type of things. As a high school guest, they probably won't have those opportunities to apply those scholarships or in any other funding cycle to their coursework. So hopefully that makes sense on how we're handling the class and the credit as we progress through this project. Okay, so I was just taking a second to look at some of the questions that are in the chat box. It's actually very, very active. One of the things that I'm just reading, the one that pops up right here is, do they pay up front as they go? That's one thing that we're trying to do with just within extension and within the 4-H program, is we know that if they're at the end they're going to take 4 credits, we can basically get a general idea of how much it's going to cost. So what we'll do is just split that over 4 years. So if they sign up, they can pay installments basically each of the 4 years they're in it. So at the end, they won't just have one great big tuition bill at the end. They'll just break it up into smaller chunks, pay it to the Wyoming 4-H Foundation, and then they'll just be able to cut the check and pay for their for the tuition for that course as they get closer there. So the one thing is, it says, will they actually pay for the tuition? And this one they will. This is actually a college course. It's not like an AP or college credit class to their high school. This is an actual University of Wyoming course. So they will actually have to pay for tuition, whether they do it as a high school guest or as a college freshman. Just trying to see if there's any other here that maybe other questions that did not get addressed. The one about specific fees, we're probably going to run this one as an outreach course. So they'll just basically be the outreach delivery fee and not all of the on-campus fees associated with computer labs, athletics, all of those fees as well. But they will obviously pay the College of Ag fee and then the outreach delivery fee, which last I checked, it was like $25 for the outreach credit fee.
Warren, this is Jonathan. I'm just cognizant of time, and you guys asked me to kind of push us along. I know there was a couple more things that we promised we'd cover, and I'm not trying to cut you off, but are you okay at a point where we move? Did you have more to go, or are we okay to let Robin talk about this as an example and then our last minute things?
Nope, absolutely.
Wait, Jonathan, though, there is a question that does need just quickly answered by Warren, is Stacy's question about the scholarships.
Oh, right. So one thing we did do, we put into the grant an opportunity for scholarships. So right now we have 20 scholarships of $125, which would basically pay for one of the 3 years of their tuition. That will be in the brochure. We'll have an opportunity for them to go on the link, fill out the scholarship application, and then we will select basically the first 20 students that will help pay for some of that scholarship, or help pay some of that tuition to this scholarship.
It's a one-time deal as part of the grant just to get this thing off the ground, though, just to be clear.
That's correct.
Okay, Robin, if you wanted to share.
Yep, I'm ready. So just real quickly, because we had some questions about kind of what kinds of activities would we ask you to help us develop. So I guess, first of all, the key is maybe if you're interested in developing for a certain section, you'll see and we'll share these documents with you when get off the call today. I'm trying to make a list of who all's on. So for example, on reproduction, Dawn is in charge of that one. So what we'd ask you to do is maybe get in touch with Dawn, find out who's going to be teaching the lecture portion of that. And then what we'd want you to do is ideally maybe visit with whoever's teaching the lecture portion so that whatever lab or activity you create actually coincides with what they're teaching. And sometimes I think the people teaching those might have other great ideas of what kinds of things that could go along to complement what they're teaching. But what we wanted to do was kind of create a format of what we're looking for, just as an example. This, again, is just a draft, so you know. But this is an example of a lesson or activity that would be posted on YO courses. And one of the things that they would be able to complete to get post back into their portfolio on YO courses and get their credit. So it's going to say what section it is. So it says genetic reproduction, lesson 1, activity 1, and what the activity is. In this case, it's artificial insemination. It'll have a short objective of what the kids are expected to learn through it. And then it'll have an assignment. So in this case, the assignment is that they attend an AI workshop, school, or camp on one or more species. We clarify that the program must be administered by someone that has been trained in the AI process and include a minimum of 2 hours instruction and or hands-on learning. So again, this is like Dawn's example of the kid going into the backyard with dad. it's not really going to work. We want them to verify that they're doing it with someone who's really trained in the procedure. And then on WIO courses, they would go and post their answers to the questions that we have listed here. And again, these are just examples, but types of things where they have to document what they've learned. So what school or workshop did you attend? Who was it hosted by? Who taught it? What species were covered? All of those kinds of questions. And those are really, you know, designed to be fairly short, but designed we want them to kind of have the kids reflect on what they've learned, and then maybe reflect on how they would apply what they've learned. And then at the bottom of every one, we're going to have a place for it to be signed. So whoever taught the AI workshop that they went to then would have to sign that that kid was actually there. Then the kids would post that on their WIO courses in their homework folder. So again, just to reiterate, these are the kinds of activities that we're looking for help for people that are interested in helping, but it's important that that connection is made first to figure out who's teaching the lecture portion of the course so that we're really designing activities that coincide with what they're learning in the lecture. So any questions on that? I guess I should say I only sent Jonathan this one. We created another one that was just kind of a generic template too, that is a more independent study kind of one. So it wouldn't actually require the kids. Our concern is that if all the opportunities are things like an AI school or things where they're going to have to travel, that maybe it'd be difficult for the kids to get those lab experiences. So we wanted to create some that could be done in their home county or done on their own. So an example would be with breeds, and Warren showed that on the year 1 detail. So one of their assignments could simply be that they have to give a demonstration or a presentation within their club, or, you know, county presentation day at the state level, whatever, on comparing and contrasting the breeds specific to the animal they show. So even though year 1 is beef and small animals, if they show pigs, they may want to do a presentation on pigs, so that they're actually really, you know, learning about their species too. And then there's documentation that shows, you know, we ask the kids to have someone video their presentation. Like maybe their presentation has to be interactive, and they have to give a quiz to their participants afterwards to show that they've taught something. So there's a variety of ways that those can look, and a lot of creative things that I think kids, particularly kids in our high schools now, are so used to collaborative work and you know, technology work, that some of the things I see our high school kids do, it excites me to see that they could do those for projects in this program, because I think we could pull those back off WIO courses and use them as teaching tools in our clubs, to be real honest with you. So any questions there?
All right, then. I think I have just a final, we just have 2 more things we want to go over with you. And one is just kind of a timeline so that you guys can kind of see where we're at in the program and where we're ready to head. And so we are ready to kick off after this, is that we're going to send this information out, is going to be an invitation sent from the State 4-H office to all the kids that have 1 year of age eligibility from freshman on to participate in the program. And that will be the brochure, the scholarship application link, etc. And then we have set up 3 Zoom calls that will be for kids or parents to engage in, so that they have an opportunity to get online and kind of learn. So that'll go into that invite out there with information as well. And those are scheduled for November 21st, November 29th, and December 8th. So those will be Zoom calls where anybody across the state can come learn about the program and how they can get involved with it. The team that is working on it, and we haven't said this, is it's been the 4 of us present, but there's other individuals that are part of this team that are helping create those activities within those sections, and that is Kim and Gretchen, Jeremiah and Liz. And so with that being said, is that we're all diligently working to try to get those activity sheets created and ready to go in December, with the idea that we'll kick off in January with the first lecture in breeds and a list of the opportunities for them to do their labs. So we are looking forward that we'll have our first class kickoff in January as far as kids that are ready to be involved. And hopefully with that, you know, that you guys can help us out and get some kids recruited and get them to get on these parent youth information calls, so that they can figure out how they can get engaged in what they need to do. So.
I just posted too, if anybody else in the rest of the team had stuff that what they wanted to add that we missed, and sharing with the greater good of our extension colleagues, please, Liz, Grady, Jeremiah, pipe in here.
So one final thought, just to encourage you guys, is the educators that are on the call, to really, when we get the information out to you, to really promote it to your kids. I mean, the success of this is really going to only happen when we have kids in the program. And so the last thing I want to see is that it's just that those of us that are passionate and working on the program, Dawn, myself, Liz, Kim, I don't want to see it just be our kids. We kind of wrote the grant that we would pilot it with a smaller group, but we really, really, really think we can make this work on a bigger scale right away. So, I mean, I don't see a lot of difference between 5 counties and if we had kids from 23. So we really want you guys to promote this to your kids, ask questions. We'll get the information out for the Zoom calls, the parent information calls, and we'd love to see some of your kids and parents on those.
One thing I'll add before we hang up is that we have so many colleagues from across the country that are so interested in doing this, and they haven't been able to pull it off as to date, and we feel like we're there. And so it's pretty exciting. Everybody is interested in what we're doing and how we've been able to do it. And I think it just kind of everything came together for us with Worry. And now Dr. Day, the department head of the Animal Science, is on board and thinks it's terrific. So it's exciting for us. And this is going to be something that's going to be hopefully replicated. If not replicated across the country, they're going to enroll at the University of Wyoming and get college credit through us for these 4-H members. So that's something that's pretty cool, that we've been ecstatic that we've been able to be able to get it this far and to get it going.
I would just add to that it's really important that we recognize how important Worry has been to this. You know, Worry's been in conversations with Don at least for years about something like this, and having him as an advocate has been really, really beneficial to us. So if any of you get a chance to thank Worry for this, please do.
Right.
Okay, Robin, I think it's might have to be wrapping stuff up. I don't know if there's more you want to add.
Nope.
Anything else from any of our team members? I see some mouths moving, but you're all...
Jonathan, I guess I will just add in there is that I guess I want to reiterate the fact that there's an opportunity for everybody to get involved and help with this project and engage, is that we really need assistance and help in not just recruiting the kids, as Robin said, but also in building those lab experiences. And so those lab experiences will grow and expand as we hear about things, and that's going to be a communication link that has to happen across the whole state. So for example, I was just using one of the examples is that, as Stacy said in the chat box, is about that she offers stuff in her statewide camp, and she's done that and she shared that, and that's the exciting part, is that we'll take those and we'll put them onto a statewide list that just keeps growing and giving kids opportunities. And so that's really where we do need your guys' help, is to create those opportunities for the lab experiences, and it's going to take everybody across the state to develop and administer those. Are there any other questions? Does anybody have questions that we haven't answered?
Rob, make sure you tell me when we're done so I can stop recording.
Oh, okay. So before you stop, though, we try to figure out how to record that chat somehow. I think there's a way to save it, but
It's saved. I just got it.
okay. If anyone else has any questions, please ask now. Otherwise, we'll let you all go 5 minutes early.
See everybody at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Log in
Thanks.
for door prizes.
Thanks, Jonathan.
All right, thank you all.